welcome to the Cyrus community. This is a Fireplace Conversation. This is 2021, December. In January, we started with a prophetic word that we're in the season to experience God's power to create wealth. But when that prophetic word came, God gave us a scripture that warned us that in this land where God is going to give us the power to create wealth, there will be giants, 7 of them which are greater and mightier than us. But he said something, I will give you the power, but at the same time, I will hand over the giants to you for you to destroy. And we've done that throughout the year, and now we are relooking at 2021 and see the 7 giants. What have we done with them? We started with Hittites, and of course, last week we talked about the Jebusites. At this point, if you're joining us for the very first time and you do not understand who are the giants, what are the giants, and what are they about, I would tell you, stop. Go back and watch the giants so that you understand today's conversation. Now, we are looking at Hittite, the very first giant, the giant of fear. Now, everyone you see here has gone through the same journey that you have gone if you've been tracking with us. We dealt with Hittite, the terror, the fear, the fear of unknown. And we want to ask ourselves, what is it that we have experienced that maybe we can share and help somebody who is watching? So we are looking at Hittite, the very first giant.
Yes, and again, it's good to emphasize the preamble. We've always said certain key things. One, we're in a prophetic season. Right. That season is what we would call a Kairos for the power to create wealth.
Yes.
But we also said in every Kairos there are some processes, what we then call the Chronos activities that we need to get and engage with. And so the Bible always is interesting because whenever you see a major story in the Bible, we say always look at the pretext and sometimes the post-text to understand the context. Now the context, of course, was Deuteronomy 8:18, which God talks about when you have entered. And he has given you power, do not forget. But we want to go back to Deuteronomy 7 to see the preamble, which if we miss, then this other part won't come to pass. Right. And that is where the context of the giants came in. So I think that being the picture, maybe we can begin talking about your own maybe insight or interaction or confrontation with the Hittite. Right. Yes.
Yeah, I think start with.
Yeah. I think for me, right from the word go, the thing that first of all intrigued me is the fact that one, God has given us the land. God has given you the land. But in that land, there are giants. Now, the thing is, he doesn't say that he's going to deal with giants himself. It's you have to deal with them. The other thing is, these giants are not out there. They are within.
Yes.
And therefore, sometimes we enter into God's promise, or we enter into something thinking that there is something that is waiting for me out there. When in real sense, we are our very own enemies. Yes. The very enemy that we're talking about there, it is inside of us. And therefore, for me, when I came into confrontation with the Hittite, of course, you're talking about issues of fear, issues of being terrified, you don't know what is going to happen, and that is what now caused me not to take this any step. In other words, I know what God has said, I know who has said it, but taking a step or just doing the activities that are required for me to see that word coming to pass. Because in other words, out of hesitance, there was a lot of hesitance. Is it going to happen? What is going to happen? Those kinds of questions.
Notice how the questions are normal.
Yes.
I mean, when you talk about the Hittite, it's not like the Hittite comes with this scary volume, telling you, here I am, fear. It's questions you ask every day. When you talk about fear, where you say, wait a minute, when God says, I'm going to be in business, how shall it be? Right. We had Zachariah, we had Mary, all of them asking the same question, where you're like, you first ask, how shall these things be? Because without the word, without believing God, that which he has promised you, I mean, these giants are 7, they are mightier, and it is God telling you, not fellow man. This is your creator telling you, my friend, I know who's in there, and I know from a fallen position what kind of a person you are. Maybe, Christine, you need to tell us,
I wanted to say something, I think in line with that. I think my bulb moment came when covering the Hittite, that the reason why I'm not fruitful is because of the fear. Yes. I am never moving forward. I'm never having any change or growth or any kind of challenge, confronting any challenge, or even discovering who I am.
Yes.
Because this fear constantly reminds you, you can't get here. And all of a sudden, like, wow, no wonder I'm not fruitful. No wonder there's nothing that changes in my life.
Right.
I
But
think
you
for
look
me,
busy.
Yes.
You're confessing.
Yes.
You're believing.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
praying. But you're like, why are things not moving?
I like actually what Pauline has said, because the fear then incapacitates you.
Yes.
Right.
It paralyzes you and causes you to think, I can't advance forward. And the fear of the unknown literally kind of puts a stop into what it is you're trying to do. So that then becomes like, do I advance? Do I not advance? And I think for us, normally as humans, the natural and the safest space is to retreat inward.
Of course.
To retreat inward.
Who wants
and
to
think,
confront? I think maybe, Sylvia, you need to tell us. You have a story.
yeah.
And you have a story of fear. I mean, like, she dealt with fear. She looked at it,
Yeah.
you know, on the face to face.
Yeah.
Tell us your story.
So earlier this year, I really wanted to venture into the business world, but I think for me the first thing was, do I have capital? I'm entering into an industry I have no idea about. So the first thing I kept querying myself is this word really real? And for me, that's why I noticed I started wasting time. Because now God is waiting for you to take a step, and you're querying God, you're like, how will I do it?
Right.
But the time you start to take the plunge, then now that's the time fear attacks you. It's like you don't have capital. Where will you get the right resources? Who will be your employees? They tell you, remember you are in Kenya, where corruption is ripe. So be ready. So even as you go to those government offices to get the licenses, now that's when you meet the monsters.
Yeah.
It's the fear is now there are people, because the giants come in form. They're both internally and sometimes they're externally, the people you meet.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you go there, you're trying to tell them, I need this. They're like, my friend, this is Kenya, you have to pay.
You have to do something.
You have to do something to facilitate the license coming. And for me, that was a moment where you have to stand your ground and say, if this is God, then let it be. I will walk my ground. I'll keep my gaze on God, and I will let the word manifest.
Now tell us, did you win?
Actually, I did win, because the victory, for me, once I started hearing the giants, all I know is that at the end there is victory.
Yeah.
I think that's the point we all need to capture, that at the end victory awaits us.
Yes.
Along the way, there will be trials and temptations, those ones. But you have to keep your gaze on God, knowing that at the end is victory.
Right.
So having that word in me and keeping my gaze on God, He helped propel me. In those days when you feel your spirit is so low, is so downcast, God, you keep remembering, God, this is your idea. This is the word that you've given to us. This is a prophetic word you gave us in 2021. And in this season, we are not just going to be spectators.
Yes.
We have to have a story at the end of it all.
Yeah.
Now there's something she said, yeah, that keep your gaze when you hear the word, when you hear the prophetic word, keep your gaze on Christ. Now this person is watching and asking, listen, how do I gaze on the word?
Right. I think, as usual, we say God is simple, but his simplicity is not easy. Not easy in the sense that it's our backlog, it is who we have been that resists the new reality. You know, we usually think we are facing a difficult situation. No, we are facing ourselves. We are facing our history. I'm assuming by the time you're watching this, you'll have watched Thinking Unusual. And if you haven't, please go back and watch. And one of the things that I spoke about there was the reality that your mind shapes your brain. And if your mind shapes your brain takes the shape of whatever is in your mind. Now, once the brain does that, your body complies.
Right.
Now, what does that mean? It means that the brain's greatest power is memory. It depends entirely on memory. But for it to operate by memory, it needs to accept something as a reality before it's kept in memory. So when you have an experience, your brain has no way of knowing whether it is right or wrong. It just knows if you believe it to be true, it must be true.
Right.
And if it is true, your brain now puts it into the memory banks. So every time any situation arises concerning that issue, the brain brings back database, the memory to say this is what the reality is.
Yeah.
Now we take a case like that, like you say, keep your gaze on Christ. What does that mean? It means God says there's something else. If you didn't take time to put that in your memory,
So
Here's the battleground.
you're saying that when the word comes,
Yes.
there is a moment of meditation.
Yes.
Exactly.
Why do we meditate? So that we can now actually
Believe that that is the reality.
and now start affecting what the brain knows.
Exactly.
So you're displacing what is in the brain. Because as much as the word has come, because maybe you're watching us, you've been tracking since
Yes.
January, you've had the word, but December you're looking back and saying, listen, is there a reason to celebrate?
Exactly.
Because I didn't see the word. Now some people say they didn't see the word. Now it's the mind, it's
Yes.
the brain.
It's true. We'll take Sylvia's case. So you go into this environment,
Okay.
and we have details of her story. And these people make a demand on you, and they say, look, either this is what you pay, and they make sure it looks hefty and impossible.
Yes.
And then, but if you work with us, this is what you pay. Now, we've always told you, whenever something is for free or cheap, you are the product.
Yes.
Right.
You are the one who is being traded there. It's not money.
Yeah.
And the question is you have to ask yourself your value versus the amount. And you sit and say, if this is what is the correct thing, I will pay it. The reality is this. I'm fulfilling a principle in scripture.
Yes.
I will not be persuaded because you're trying to get me to Deuteronomy 8:18 to say it was my power.
Yes.
Because the minute you bribe,
Yes.
the minute you walk in corruption,
Yes.
you've already removed God.
Exactly.
It's actually you now.
Yeah.
So what is under attack right here is that very truth. So the minute I say, no, it's not my strength, in the natural it looks like I lost money. The truth is, the transaction in Babylon failed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Money may have moved from your hands, but what is money? It's currency. You paid the full price.
Yes.
You know what happens? You activated the door that gives that demon no access to you again or your business. But the minute you did the exchange, remember what we said at the very beginning of this series. We spoke about Melchizedek, and when he showed up, we always forget that Melchizedek showed up before he did, the king of Sodom showed up.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And the king of Sodom has always got a very good strategy. Keep the things, give me the people.
Yeah.
What is the trade-off always?
The people.
Give me the people. You are the product.
Right, right.
The minute you know that, now keeping your gaze simply means if God said this, I'll pay any price to stay within the context of what He said.
And I think that is where you mentioned it, the issue of meditation comes in, because sometimes it is possible to just hear the word or hear a proceeding word, then you believe it or you capture it. But as time goes by, when persecution comes for the sake of the word, if then you had not built yourself, or rather meditated on this word, and make sure that it has become a conviction inside of you, then that's when you buckle down.
Yes.
And that is where now the issues of meditation then becomes very, very key and very important.
And I think it's crucial,
Yes.
that statement. One thing you guys will notice a lot, I have a habit of picking certain words that just pass through. When, not if.
Certain to
It's
come.
guaranteed.
Certain to
When
come.
persecution comes for the sake of the word.
Yeah.
Meaning the devil has put a higher premium on the word than you have.
Oh yeah.
Most of the time we don't believe.
You don't.
The devil does.
Yeah. So he's willing to make big offers
Yes.
Yeah.
for you to give it up. But if you stay with the word, the payoff will be greater than what you're dealing with right there.
There's something you said that if you bribe,
Yes.
you've just given your business up
Exactly.
to the enemy territory.
Yes,
So now that
Yeah.
you've passed this stage,
Yes.
you think it's over, not
No, it's
knowing
just started.
here I have just handed over. What does that mean? 5 years down the line, you look back and you say, you know what? Even though I'm in business, I'm toiling.
Yeah.
Now you try to check the source of toiling, not knowing that is where you planted the seed. Now 5 years later, the tree is facing you. Now before we go on, let's maybe summarize Hittite.
All right.
All of us, we faced Hittite.
Right.
Before we go on to the Girgashite, let's talk about Hittite and how we beat your story and your victory.
I think for me, mine, the greatest thing was paralysis. And like similar to Sylvia, do I launch forth based on what I believe I'm hearing prophetically in the house? And based on that, what are the steps that I'm willing to take to actually see that I'm walking the journey? And of course, you'll question yourself. It's not something you've done before. It's new to you. It's new territory. Like I said, your default setting is to recoil and say, maybe this wasn't exactly what I had, or give as many excuses as you can possibly think about. And when you come to a realization that it is God's design and not yours, then you settle. You settle in that reality, and fear becomes something that you must contend with by doing, not by speaking. It has to be something that you actually consciously do. So there are certain steps you have to actually engage in to be able to then actually walk in victory as far as that journey is concerned.
I think for me, when Hittite came, I remember Richard is one who kept preaching to me. Richard kept preaching to me in a scenario I think I really needed to hear that word over and over until it settles in my heart completely. I just not the broadcast, but even hearing it again at home, being broken into reality. And I remember that time he kept asking me, but you can take a challenge of the job that you do. What you are doing is not a challenge, but what was actually holding me back was actually Hittite. The fear of the unknown. Now what if? Until one day I think we sat and he drilled it on me. We did not even go to cook. I think we were calling the house girl, like we sounded very far. Please cook, we are coming. But we actually seated outside somewhere and we are really trying to decode this. What is making you not go forward? What is making you not get to that other position? What is making it so hard for you to go for an interview? And truth be said, I had to face it by actioning. And the next day, I think I had to deliver my CV and be able to go for an interview. And for me, I think that was victory. When I look back, I am like, I had to action it. No one could have actioned on my behalf. And to me, the biggest lesson was, if you are to overcome Hittites, you have to action it yourself. No one will do it for you. It's why we say Jesus is your personal savior. So is your battle with the Hittites. It is so personal at the same time.
Tell us, did you win? Now that you took the CV, because somebody might think the problem was just
delivering. I won.
That's it.
I won.
You don't need details. You won. That's all we want to know. So when you talk about Hittite, you're saying that if you face it, we are talking about destroy fear. By facing it, you're destroying it. Sylvia, tell us.
So what I also learned in this season, as you're conquering fear, it's good you keep note of the victories you get, because they help you as you progress. No, these giants, every level, they'll keep appearing, but in different versions. But if you have a place where you've written the victories you've seen, it actually energizes you and it gives you faith to propel you to know that God is still there. He has done it for you once, and He'll still do it for you again. So for me, I tell people, keep a record of the things God is doing with you. Let it be like a reference point the days you feel you're weak, the days you feel you can't move on. So for me, that's one thing I really loved. Excellent.
Yeah, I think for me, when it came to the Hittites, it is more or less on issues of fearing or asking myself questions on what will happen if I don't do 1, 2, 3. One of the things, if I can give an example, is when it comes to issues of how I was handling issues of money, and as far as my family is concerned, where you have this fear of you don't know what is going to happen next. You don't know what will happen in the future, and therefore, what the one that you're holding in the money you're holding in your hand, you don't want to really release it. You're really hanging on it because you really want to make sure that it goes as far as it goes.
You can stretch it.
Exactly, you can really stretch it. And I had to break that fear. And I'm telling you, we were laughing, I think it was last night, just looking at what God has done to us in the past few months. I mean, and especially when it came to when the fear or the removal, or it was removed, the fear of not spending, or the fear of not using money because you are afraid of what is going to happen almost every other day.
Because when you talk about money, money is something, I mean, most people will identify with. Now, you said something. When the fear was removed, I'm sure God didn't come down to remove it.
No.
So tell us what that statement is.
First of all, is when we talk about the issues of the Hittite, of that fear, is when I'm wondering, the fear is coming of, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what is going to happen in the future, and therefore I'm hanging on to this. And therefore I have to break that by looking at what I have, and first of all making sure that there is somebody that is given out, either it is tithe. In fact, to be honest, I never used to do it. But in reach a place I had to break that and say, you know what? It is not that
I like that confession. You know why? Because it frees people.
I'm laughing.
Number
Why you
one.
saying it next year?
You see, it frees people for a number of reasons.
Yes.
I think it frees people on the fact that it's a war.
Yes.
Everybody fights this war.
Oh,
Yes.
And it doesn't save you because you're in the leadership. It doesn't save you because you're pastoral. It is a real, tangible
Oh,
war.
yeah.
And number two, it also validates the fact that we don't make a demand at TCC.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
People walk around too.
We don't check your record, for the leadership. But I think the most powerful thing is where you say for yourself
Yes.
that I've walked the journey, I have gone through fear, I don't want to release because I need to stretch this, then I recognize the giant. And how do you break it? I break it like this, without giving us details.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, what happened is that now, when I started now doing what I'm supposed to do, that is the real me. In other words, I get money, one, I give the tithe off. Then the next thing is I spend. You know, it's so funny. Let me tell you.
You spent. People don't know how giants
You
come.
have no idea.
These giants are serious.
You have no idea that thinking of, I'm going to spend this either on my children or on myself, I'm losing.
Yeah.
It's almost like I was feeling like I'm losing.
Yeah.
But I had to break that by doing it.
Yes.
And let me tell you, I think there was a day, maybe I can give an example. We used to wonder, there was a time where we used to wonder, okay, what are we going to pay our house rent with? Because this money used to come, and the only thing you need to do with it is to pay the house rent. But at the same time, you're wondering, okay, if I pay house rent, what will the children eat? Or what will this and that happen? How will it happen? But you know what? I realized, you know what? I have a father. I don't have to be bound by fear here. I remember, I think it was just a month ago, when we received money, and he said, you know what? There is something that is needed to be done here, especially with the children. We are going to do that first. God will still continue paying our rent, or bringing money for our rent. And for sure, the month did not end. We did not get to the end of the month. Rent was paid.
I think what maybe I want to say something on that
Yes.
for somebody who is watching, because some of the things we are saying here, somebody out there is struggling with that same issue.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Now remember, we are saying that when you're on a journey with God, when you're talking about the wilderness season, whether it's 14 days or 40 years, if you don't beat a giant, God is looking at you and saying, listen, you are tying my hands. I want to come through for you, but you're holding on to a giant that makes it impossible for me to come through. Now, sometimes you say, I looked at my children and I said, I have to do this thing. God is telling you, that's what I've been waiting for you to do. Because the minute you break that issue, then you realize money flows. When you look back, you're like, okay, wait, I used to struggle with 1, 2, 3 things. Now notice, when you talked about Hittite and fear and all those things, he's not talking about 10 years ago.
No.
He's telling you this is a journey of now. There's a season when you could be in the valley and things are happening and you're saying, God, I want to come out of the valley. And God says, you only need to follow an instruction.
Right.
For you, it was go, do that thing. Stop holding on to this, thinking this is all that there is. And God shows you this is not all that there is if you can allow me to flow. All right? So when you talk about Hittite, it's real. The fear is real. The question is, which fear are you dealing with? Do you want to summarize for us the fear?
In
The Hittite.
fact, I also want to make you realize we deal with the giant in layers.
Yes?
You see, people assume because we taught about Hittites, we don't deal with it.
Hittite.
No, listen. There were nations of giants. There were not single giants.
There were not 7 brothers.
No.
There were
Hittite was a
nations.
nation, which means within the nation there were rulers.
Yeah.
There were people, there are levels. So what will be the Hittite we had to deal with? The Hittite we had to deal with is there's a place where God gives you a clear word. This is a season for the power to create wealth.
Yeah.
Clarity, prophetic, you break it down, you share it. A place comes when the Hittite asks you, did you hear God?
Yeah. Did God really say?
Yes, now everybody's hearing you. And everybody is beginning to flow. What if you didn't hear God? What if this wasn't God?
Yeah.
And you know, the good thing, as you begin to learn how to engage the Hittite, you say, if it wasn't God, it is still true.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's the only way to react. To say, we're going to walk it through. Maybe it isn't God, according to the fear. But this word is clear. God has spoken this before. And what happens over history, you begin to learn how God speaks. And once you do that, so for me, it was more the fear of, are the people going to see the fullness of this, of what God wants them to walk in, over and above what we are saying. And the picture for me that comes back all the time is, here is the river. Are people coming with cups or buckets or pipes? That's where our Hittite is at.
It's in levels.
Yeah, levels.
And you have to sit down and tell yourself, when we tell people, write your testimony, and then somebody calls you. Remember we said write. Somebody calls you and tells you, but I have a testimony. And you tell them what part of writer. Why? Because for
We
us,
need that
it's not just you telling us. It's somebody else hearing
Being
and
free.
you activating them, not us. As we hear, we are like, praise the Lord, it's happening. And
We
you
were
remember we said
expecting
something, somewhere in the middle of all this. We said the dam has just burst.
Yes.
You will see trickles, but those trickles are your testimony. Now somebody is starting to trickle, but they're holding on to
They're
it.
still not saying
And then somebody calls you and says, but I have a testimony, and you're like, we have a journey to go. Didn't understand I said right. But you know what? When we continued hearing the testimonies and hearing the testimonies,
Momentum.
and right now,
Evidence.
everybody around you has something to say.
Yes.
Let me not cheat you. There's some people who have nothing to say. Don't worry. They are there. But you know why? Because there are some people who say, I'm waiting to hear. Sylvia, what did you say? The next year is when they're like, you know what? There's a word you thought of, expansion. 2019. I'm starting it now because I have seen. We have people who say, until I see. Don't be one of those. But you know what? We have testimonies.
Yeah.
We do.
We are in the land.
Yeah.
And what is the land? That position where you sit in the word of God until you see it manifest. We'll talk about the land very soon. Let's talk about Girgashite. Let's talk about Girgashite, the giant of the clayey soil, the one who dwells in clayey soil.
Girgashite. The giant I hate the most.
love that.
Only, no, you know, you
My
have to
own
have-
husband, you love giants.
when you say hate the most, it means there are levels of hate. There is hate and then hate, hater, haters.
Okay, tell us.
In fact, we did 3 recordings.
3, remember?
There are 4.
There are
There's a
four.
reason.
There are
Yeah,
four.
because to me, this giant is the giant with the capacity to stop a proceeding word.
Yes. Yes.
This is the giant that Jesus says, you have made the word of God of no effect by your tradition.
Right.
To me, that is serious. In other words, this giant, let the word come. No effect. Now, it's better those who have not heard.
Yes. And this when you talk about man without the Spirit of God,
Yes.
we are simply saying this man is in the church.
Yes.
This man is you and me.
This is the
coming to a
root.
place where we live without
Yes.
the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
Where are we going? We're just clay.
Because this giant is the only, remember we said, Girgashite is the least mentioned, yet the deadliest.
Yes.
In the sense that if Girgashite did not succeed, the other giants would have nowhere to thrive.
Right.
If Adam did not take and eat, there'd be no scenario of a fall.
Yeah.
So if the woman did not see, the Bible says she saw that this was the fruit to make one wise without God. What was the offer made to her? You will be equal to God.
God.
So Girgashite claims equality with God.
Yes.
Girgashite tells you replace God, become God.
Right.
That's why it is my most hated.
Man's attempt
Yes.
to have his own version of life or
Yes.
reality without God. Now, when we say man, put your name and ask yourself, Susan's attempt to create a reality without God.
Yeah.
Now, that's Girgashite. So we have to ask ourselves, when I look at my marriage, my children, as a single person, when you look at yourself, what realities are you creating without God? Then that means you've given Girgashite a place to dwell, a place to thrive. And maybe you can just, in your own way, tell us what's your battle with Girgashite and where. Yeah.
I think when it comes to Girgashite, and especially because of it's a giant that wants you to live life without God. And for me, it is where the issue of the proceeding word was absent. You know, where you don't have a proceeding word, you don't know, what you're living for, you don't know where you're going, and therefore you find your own pathway to sort out yourself, sort out your issues by your own self. And therefore the issue of the Girgashite then, when the proceeding word comes again, we come to the issues of doubting, is this God? And therefore, if it is not God, or rather you believe it is God, but since it is not happening, you're not seeing it happening, let me find my own way. Let me find my own way, navigate my own way around. And I think that has happened to me a number of times, where it is not that I don't know what God has said. It is not that I'm not aware of my proceeding word. But now bringing that thing or coming to a place of making it work for me or walking in it then becomes difficult, and therefore what do? Set it aside. Put it aside.
Yeah.
Let me sort myself.
Yeah.
That's the word that we usually use. Sort myself. Now, by the time you get down there, then you realize, I think I have missed. Let me go back and try to find. And therefore, you are in this. You're moving two steps ahead, and then you.
So it is
back up.
frustration
Yes.
that brings you back to God.
Exactly.
Actually, that's our problem.
Yeah.
That we only come back when we hit the wall and it's like, okay, wait, it's not working. Now frustration leads you back to God. Now, if you're led back to God by frustration, you realize you're not going to Him as Father. You're going like, okay, fine, you're the only one who can sort this. Fine, do it your way.
And this is one of the things that makes this giant deadly. Because this giant doesn't appear in many places.
No.
It appears at inception points. Once it's at an inception point, the rest is settled. In other words, let's take an African cultural context.
Okay.
This giant is silent until you want to name a child.
Oh yeah.
Then it shows up. After that,
God.
not interested.
So the seed is there.
Yeah, doesn't show up until you want to get married. Shows up again. In other words, destiny points.
Right.
Naming points. Decision where destinies are involved.
Yeah.
That's the entry point. Once the serpent dealt with Eve, the serpent shut up.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't hear the voice
You don't
again.
have the serpent.
He didn't even respond to God.
Even when Adam was busy saying it was that woman, when the woman is saying it was the serpent looks
said
at
nothing.
God like,
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
Sylvia, tell us your journey with the Girgashite.
So with the Girgashite, it's the point where the word lacks practicality. It's where you're trying, you keep hearing, but the word doesn't make sense. And at the time, you can be very good at explaining to someone what this giant is. You can tell someone from A to Z, but when it comes to the practice, it's when now the Girgashite attacks you. It now tells you, you've had. But since you are not able to action, and it tells you now there is an option B.
Yes.
And the thing we need to understand, when you start, you have to just have one option.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
option should just be God. That one. Once you start having option B and C, Girgashite has started appearing.
Oh, yes.
So I think for me, the one thing, every time you're meditating and you're trying to do something and you start having option B and C, you should just know Girgashite has just arisen.
It's the best way
And
to
I think
check.
that is where, for me, it's the five senses
Yes.
landing.
Yes.
Moment when a word comes and then you try to interpret it to the five senses.
Yes.
You try to make sense. And I think I've found myself many times there, where God speaks and there's this clear word, please do A. And you're busy making sense of that. But honestly,
How?
even the season, even the place,
Yeah.
what's the place? How do I bring civilization to a culture that is highly
Yeah.
uneducated?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you mean? And yet the word is very clear. I'm bringing you here that you may bring civilization. Okay. You try to make sense, you will not move.
Yeah.
Until when you take a step, you realize he had already placed the 7,000 around that place.
yes.
So you are actually holding one string, another is holding another to make a thread. So at the end of the day, for me, I think if there's any war with Girgashites that we are still battling, is always bringing the five senses, our education, our experiences into that word when it is spoken.
I'm glad you brought in the issue of the senses, because then again it comes back to the what Eve contended with the serpent. So she's trying to become like God. She's trying to have a form of godliness but negating God himself. But here we are saying, what is God's position on anything? We tend to go for good instead of going for God, because good is easier. Good is what I'm seeing with my natural eyes, being able to perceive based on my senses, rather than being led by the Spirit to be able to walk in what is actually right.
Yeah. Generally, without the five senses, the devil has no power. Generally. You see, the term, the prince of the power of the air, actually, the Greek word for that power of the air is where we get the word media from. All right? And media, basically, what is the intent? Once I switch you off from God, you were designed to function from data. So whoever gives you that data becomes your input. It becomes your default. It becomes your way of functioning. But remember, the primary voice of the Girgashite is, did God release himself?
And when the Girgashite is asking that, it's actually taking you from the heavenly and telling you live in the earth. Interpret life with what you can see, what you can smell with your five senses. Five senses were created for us, but now they become against us. Now they're working against us. Now you're here telling yourself, you know what, if God talks to me, if it doesn't sound right, if I don't see, like,
if
it's
it doesn't
right,
feel
if
right,
it doesn't feel, you're using the same senses now to be against God.
You're using your senses to filter God.
Can you imagine? The same senses that God says, listen, with this in the earth, you're supposed to have
like I normally say, it's a reverse filter. You're supposed to hear God and use your five senses to filter the earth.
Yes.
Now you're hearing the earth and using the five senses to filter God.
That's
And can we say,
Girgashite.
maybe can I ask a question? Can we say that Girgashite is also brought about by our egos? Because most of the times when we hear these instructions, it's you fighting like your ego, and because some instructions you're like, how now? Why do you expect me to stoop so low?
All I have to do is to give you the root word for ego. God.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I am God.
God with a small g.
Ego means I am the God of my environment. I'm the captain of my destiny. That's what an ego is. Because technically, think carefully. What is your ego? Your ego is when you feel people have confronted what you believe to be your destiny. Your ego is when it is not your way. Your ego is not based on any facts. It's not based on any reality. It's based on something trying to control you when you want to be in control.
So it's not really that you have a vision, you have sight of something. It's just a matter of, I'm against anyone trying to tell me.
Exactly.
Don't tell me.
That's it.
You know?
That's it.
Mountain dwellers.
Yep.
The Amorites. What did you hear?
Wow. I think for me, the mountain dwellers, the renowned, the people who love being known. I think that's something that we all suffer in one way or another. That's why I think the giants are real. And for me, every aspect in the giant, I could see myself. You know, when you want your name mentioned, when you want, it's you to be highlighted all the time, and you're replacing God. And I think that's a battle that I have fought and I still continue fighting, where you want, instead of God being seen, it's you, the man, who's seen. Instead of God actually really prevailing at the end of the day, that what is left in the taste, as a taste in the mouth, you know, as the words in the people's lips
Yes.
is God. Instead, you want you. They be saying Richard and Richard and Richard.
And Richard.
Not when Richard spoke, this is what. When I interacted with him, this is what was left in my taste. And the taste being God. I think for me that was something that I kept starting to relook in my life. What flavor do I leave in the hearts of people?
Yes.
Do I leave myself, my what would you call them? My own tastes, my own preferences, or do I
In the
leave
lives
God?
of the people.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think I can echo that because we are almost in the same journey. She's my wife anyway. So the thing is, when it comes now to the Amorite, now we're talking about the mountain dwellers. Now in that scenario, then it means that you're looking down on people. You're looking down on others. It's almost like, it's like what you're talking about, the ego thing. I mean, because there's something that is elevating itself. And where you want to hear that, it may not necessarily even be mentioned. For me, I think it is where even when somebody, even as much as it may not be before people, but that's because somebody gives a report of, hey man, you said something and I got a breakthrough.
Something inside of you
feel
stands
like,
out.
man.
If it was not me, if it was
You know what I mean? You will not be anywhere. And that thing is something that for me that I have to look at myself. When the Amorite was mentioned, I identified that. And you see, when you identify it, for me, is where I am very conscious. Even when somebody calls me, or you're having a chat, either on WhatsApp or Zoom or whatever, and they say things of how I said something, and they got, they were helped, they got, a breakthrough or something. Then I'm like, hey, Richard, wait, watch out. You caution yourself.
Yes.
And I think it's crucial because the Amorite is very tricky to navigate. It's just like a mountain trail.
Right.
Navigating mountain trails is tricky. It's easy to slip and to fall.
Right.
You can't hunt. Listen, most wars that are fought against mountain people are lost.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh yeah, because
Globally, most, the Mujahideen, the Taliban, you name them.
live in a mountain.
Mountain people are very difficult to deal with because they have a vantage point.
Oh, yeah.
They don't need as much effort to hit you as you need to access them. All right, so it has to be navigated very strategically. Because at the same time, God talks about raising the mountain of the Lord's house. So there's two sides to this coin that have to be navigated consciously.
Yes.
And I'll use your example to explain it. There's a position where God allows you to acknowledge that He graced you with something, and that thing is benefiting people.
Right.
So you responding to truly what God has given you is making a change in praise to what God has done for you is okay. But in depending and thriving on the response, you see the two sides. So the ability to hear people respond and say, what you say transform my life, gives you the confidence that you had God. And that's a good confidence. It elevates you correctly because it's internal. But the one of dependence, that now you need to hear from people, you're already playing with the Amorite and bordering on the Hivites.
And you see, like what Pauline said,
Yes.
when you hear your name,
Yes.
when you hear Susan,
Yes.
after, if nobody mentions you, start looking around.
Oh yeah.
Have you forgotten me? I'm the one who did this.
Now, here is another two-sided coin. Remember, like, we'll talk again about the Jebusites, about the two-sided, the victim and the victor are both Jebusites. Even with the Amorite, it's possible. Let me explain it in a ministry context.
Right.
In a ministry context, there are ministers who thrive on their title, not their grace.
Yes.
Okay? So it's not so much that God has given me a prophetic grace, and therefore I hear God and people's lives are changed, but it is people are not calling me prophet.
Oh yeah.
Okay? So that's one problem. Having said that, there's people on the other side who don't want to call you or recognize you as prophet because they want to equalize. They have the same problem you have.
The Amorites.
Oh yeah.
Because they want you to be familiar. That means they want to become a mountain dweller like you.
So
you have a titular problem,
Yes.
and they want to cut down your title so you are equal. You are both Amorites.
Notice how these giants can be so subtle sometimes to even identify them.
Yes.
And there's somebody sitting and saying, by the way, everything you've talked, I don't have.
Correct.
Here, God didn't understand that some of us don't have giants, you know. But notice how it's easy for us to say, we need to come together and collect money for the poor. Who are we?
We.
We are the moderate.
We want some money for the poor. We are looking down on people. And there are some people who come and say, can you imagine that thing was done by a security man?
Yes.
Meaning, the security man is where?
Down there.
Can you imagine this whole thing was done by just a, I wanted to say Shamba boy. What is Shamba boy? So you always laugh at me. Look at how they all This thing was done by just a God. What do you mean? Who is a gardener to you? So when you talk of Amorite, you don't have to go and stamp your authority.
No.
You just need to be subtle and just say, imagine I was walking and I was just standing there and a gardener came and you're like, yeah.
Amorite is deadly.
I mean, it's something you look at your life and
show
you...
up at functions and where am I sitting?
Absolutely. And I think,
Can somebody stand up?
Yeah. The flip side of that is, well, not really the flip side is where you're then trying to seclude yourself in line with what you're saying, that you're better than everyone else and you become inaccessible and you have decided and dictated who it is who has access to you.
Yes.
And I mean, it's just elevating yourself and your ego feeds off of
Yes.
that, which is why we have people who walk into certain spaces and have the sentence like, don't you know who I am?
Who I am, and people don't just talk to me. And I have to use that one. I have to tell Christians this because believers, you come to a congregation and you decide I don't talk to anyone here. Yeah, after service I'm gone. And if I have to talk to, I only talk to Pauline
Man of God.
and I talk to Sylvia.
Yes.
Because they are the men of God.
Yes.
After that I don't. And if it's ushers, the head usher. Listen, in the body of Christ is where you actually find the Amorites. Because there are people who have this feeling that they are too big for this space. I filled the space and I don't need anyone to come into my space. And you think it is being, sorry to use the word classy. No. It's been the dwelling place of the Amorites.
Let me say something strange about class. Because it does exist. Even in your wallet. You just check how you arrange your money.
It's pecking order.
And one note didn't shout and say, I'm more important. You naturally. So when you have weight, your weight finds its space.
When you have weight.
It finds its own space. Listen, this is a genuine, authentic thing. That there are places you go, nobody knows you, but somehow,
They pick you out.
because it's authentic. And there are people who, do you know why? You know the Amorite looks around because nobody's looking at them.
So
Why
the
can't
difference
anybody notice me?
Yeah.
You're the one trying to look, who's not noticing me?
So in life, like you're saying,
Yeah.
even when you go to any area of life,
Yes.
there is definitely
Hierarchy.
hierarchy. Actually, that's the word to use. There is hierarchy.
Yeah.
If you go to the animal kingdom, there's a way lions don't introduce themselves to antelopes. Antelopes know who the boss is. You know, when you go to and even angelic beings, there's hierarchy. When you go to the minerals, there's hierarchy. When you go even in the natural,
In fact, the funniest.
just go to the motor vehicle industry. There are
Yeah.
levels in this thing.
Hang on.
There are levels.
There is actually, I saw a clip on social media that there was this guy who had parked his car, a good car, a Land Cruiser,
Yes.
and then a guy came with a three-wheeled, what do I call it?
Tuk-tuk.
Yeah, it's called tuk-tuk. Yeah, that's what we call
The
it.
Indian Bajaj.
Yes, that thing. And parked next to it. And then this guy comes back, and then he looks at this thing, and he starts making noise.
You parked next to me.
How can you park this thing? And he used a bag for that.
Right side level.
It is equating it to what? Something that is just
Useless.
worthless.
Whatever. Yeah.
How can you park this thing next to my car?
Not next to me, my car.
My car. You don't park next to my car because this car has class.
Yeah.
And
You see?
at that point, then you realize that's an Amorite right there.
Now you see, anyone who defends what they own, don't own it, it owns them.
Yeah.
Because if you owned it, you didn't notice it.
Yeah.
it would be your norm. But because it's not your norm, because it's above your class, what has actually happened, somebody has come and reminded you of your real class. And you are offended that you're being reminded, you're trying to distance yourself.
The Amorites.
That's the Amorite. Let me tell you a story of a friend of ours, a minister. He did this. He's a global minister, he travels. He deliberately, at that time he didn't describe it as Amorite, but he was doing a test to prove how these things happen. So he was traveling to a certain nation to go preach. I won't mention the nation. So on arrival, in the aircraft, he told his team, he said, let's walk over. I'll pull your bags, and you guys walk. And because he's smaller, and these guys are big, they came out. His guys were received, put in a car and taken. He was left with the luggage.
Wow.
Ouch. They'll get you your
Because
for the luggage.
somebody that will come and pick
Somebody
you.
will pick you.
And he's the keynote speaker of the entire conference.
Wow.
The Amorite.
The Amorite. Now, on the other hand, we've interacted with what you now call greatness. We're in this major conference in one of the countries, and we were many leaders, apostolic leaders, prophets, so on. It was a major leadership conference. And during the dinner, there's this elderly man who would come out to check how we are doing, who has eaten, who has not eaten, have you been served, which country are you from, are you comfortable, everything. And he served all of us. In the evening, he was the keynote speaker of the conference. All of us were ashamed.
But I think
Because
also
we didn't even take care of each other. Forget, we are all guests. But the fact that the man who you're all coming to hear is the man who served all of you. Now that's greatness.
let me just say this. You see, when you talk of apostles coming together, if there's an Amorite in their midst, all they need to do is ask each other which nation.
That's all.
Now we are all apostles. Yeah, my nation, you should. Yeah, my friend, where are you from? And then somebody even asks you, where is that? Which part of Africa to show you? I don't even know where you come from. Meaning, if you're an apostle, I'm an apostle. I come from a nation that is. So this thing is, remember, when God said destroy the giants, he was not talking to non-believers. He was not talking to the people outside. He was telling his own, I'm giving you a land. In this land, you destroy. Meaning, in our midst, we have to ask ourselves, where is the Amorite we have to destroy it? So don't look for the Amorites out there. Ask yourself, yes, I might not be an apostle looking down on others. I might not be in this CEO place where I'm looking down on people, but where am I looking down? Because if you don't do that, the giants are subtle. They will live with you and they will grow when you're still thinking you don't have one.
Maybe just to add on to your point, when you're discussing the Amorite, I think the first place we can start by checking is through our conversation. You know, when you speak is when you can know what is really inside you. From the conversation, how you and even talk to maybe your peer, or as you're talking to someone maybe who you may think is beneath you, I think your conversation will really help you identify where the Amorite is. Because you'll never automatically, if I don't see you as worthy in my eyes, it's very hard for me to speak to you with respect. And if I think of you with greatness, then you'll notice I'll almost kneel down before you. So I think the conversation is a very good place to check where the Amorite is.
The giant. Let's talk about the Canaanite. This land is called the land of Canaan. Now, for it to be named after this giant, this is the giant that says, listen guys, you are in my land. In this place, you live by my rules. It is me who dictates how we live. Now, we discovered the Canaanite is the one giant that if you can slay, it will be easier to handle the others. Tell us about the Canaanites.
Literally, see, I think the series when we spoke about nations, two kingdoms, we said every nation has a king, every nation has a military, and every nation has an economy. So the Canaanite plays in the economy. Because the economy, listen, if an economy is bad, even the king can lose his throne. You see, even the military can go into rebellion. Because many nations crumble because they didn't pay the military. So whoever controls the economy controls the nation. So everything is framed by the economy. So when you say this is the land of Canaan, you're already being told it's a transactional land. And the giants all are involved in the transaction, one way or another. But like we said, the Canaanite is also known as a trafficker, meaning his business is not legit. The trafficker is always, and traffickers primarily, the term trafficker primarily deals with the sale, purchase, and economy of human beings.
So at the end of it all, the Canaanite is after your soul.
Yes.
Yes. No matter what else they offer you.
Yeah, very.
Now we talked about the Canaanite being a trader. It's about, I give you, give me. This is what I'm giving, and because I'll get even more.
Yes.
Where have we traded? Let's talk about our trading. Because we are the one, we are talking about us
Yes.
in the body of Christ.
Right.
Where have we? Let's start with you, Christine.
Right. So I think for me, in regards to the Canaanite, it's the issue of where have I become a slave to doing certain things. Because from there, then you find like you're trying to assert yourself to be able to get either, mainly, let's call it what it is, money.
Yes.
Right? You're trying to either outwork yourself, outshine someone else, and bring someone else down probably in the process to make yourself be the one who has the most in that environment.
Right.
And then you examine yourself and you're thinking to yourself, how can I get to a point where I'm disallowing, or how do I actively fight the giant where it's money that's concerned? And that becomes an extremely sensitive topic to tiptoe around, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, sorry.
Yep.
Okay, in the issue of the Canaanite is very interesting because you've talked about issues of trading. Now, sometimes, yeah, we can trade money. But again, for me, where much of what was pointed out is on trading with God. Now, where we trade with God, where for me is like, God, you have said that you're going to do 1, 2, 3. There is a promise. And then, if there is a promise, then it means that on my end, since I am used to a certain way of doing things, and there is this notion, or there is even this mentality, and most of what we've had all throughout our lives is where there is nothing for free. So that means if this is what God is promising to do, then there is something I also need to do in order for me to get this. And it's almost like it involves a transaction with God, where, you know what, God, if I do this, then you're also obligated to do this. And therefore then it's almost like something that has to keep on swapping itself, where I hear what God is saying, then I want to do something about it, or there is something I want, then I do something, and I want God to respond to it. And especially when it comes to issues of money. And especially when it comes to issues of, you know what, God, I have given my tithe,
So,
can you now respond to me?
Yes.
You know, I think that for me was really highlighted.
And I think for me, I can give an example because I never knew I battled the Canaanite till when I had this message. I remember the first time when we were told about the generosity envelope. And I was like, okay, so you know here, the more you give, the more you receive. So in that time of ignorance, I would give, even without consulting, you just send, you're just like, I know God will
Come through.
will come through. So that was a time of ignorance because I was giving with the expectation somebody would give me. So the day I don't get anything, I'm like, when I keep this weather,
Are people still giving envelopes?
yeah, because you're like, when will it ever be my turn? And guys are there writing, I have received, you're like, gosh, am I the one who doesn't? But it was,
And you have sent.
And I have sent. So at that time, I thought I was being smart. And I thought I was trying, it was like I was trying to bribe God. Because I was expecting him also in return to favor me. Unfortunately, no one. No one was saying.
Don't worry, me and you understand what's happening.
But when now the message of generosity came, it now brought light. And I learned you give to give.
Yes.
And you don't give expecting to receive.
Let me say this on a light note. Somebody told me that every Wednesday, when you talk about the generosity envelope, for me, after the conversations, I give myself 10 minutes. And my phone is there looking. And they're waiting for the phone
On
to
the
go.
receiving end.
And they're waiting. That's why I asked them, fine. For you to be looking at that envelope, did you send? No. Do you know they actually said wait? I was actually waiting to receive, but they had not said. So for me, I'm like, listen, we give not so that we receive. I mean, for me, I think it took me so long to get an envelope that one day somebody sent me, I'm like, hello, why did you send this?
Yeah.
You get, because it's not like I'm waiting to get or something. But you reach a place where you're like, listen, I give to give. God is my provider.
Yes.
Not on, when you get hung up on the envelope, it becomes an idol. So you're actually saying the only way God can come to me, you're so happy. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you're happy. You're kind of uplifted because you know there might be an envelope. But when you know God is your provider, you tell yourself, I give because He's my provider, not because He's the one who gives me so that I'm giving so that I get. No. I'm giving because I know who my giver is. It's God, not men. So,
I think for me, it's on that very line. I think one of the things that came to like a bad moment again is where you can receive something, not necessarily yours. It is actually for someone else. So it's never a trade with God. It is never a buying and selling with God. It's not because I've done this and that's why He's doing this for me. And so you're busy trying to check. And we are coming from a background. I think my greatest battle coming from a background of religion, where we were told if you pray every day at 3 a.m. and you fast this long and then that's where things are going well for you. And if you find something is not going well with you, Abu, check again. Maybe you've reduced your giving or you've reduced your prayer life, or almost it was hard to break that because it was a reality. That how then do you exist? How then do you relate to this God without really giving similar input? How do you do that? And when you look at it, I think my bad moment was again when I started looking at when I was giving that much. Ideally, I was actually trading my soul. I was actually wasting time, or I was actually wasting my body, not necessarily growing internally, and not necessarily knowing His voice.
When you trade, when you give to get, is when you don't get.
Yes.
It's almost like God is saying, until you get it, that no, I'm not giving you because you gave. You have to break that. And I think most people, when you talk of Canaanite, most people had to battle with that. That I am giving because I'm a giver. God has already provided. God is my provider. Therefore, I'm not doing this to trade with Him. You understand? Most people had to do that, to break that thought, because like you say, the brain had already known that it is about giving and then I'll get.
The reason this land is called the land of Canaan, meaning if something is named, it means the character of the environment is connected to that reality. And then why this is a big battle, and then I'm working on the book Unmasking Mammon. It will be coming out soon, where because this is one thing we feel you have to navigate internally. It's like personal surgery. And this is a relentless principality that just comes in layers and layers and layers, and you have to keep battling because it's the easiest one to slip back. It's the easiest. And then why this is crucial is because you've grown up with a history that anything that connected to life to you was connected to money. Tangibly. That's where you're coming from. Food, money. House, money. Clothes, money. So the programming in your system completely, even when you want to hear God, you still put Him with money. When you pray, tell God, give me money. You see, you're still at that default point. Going beyond that default point is a battle by itself. And learning that the primary reason for giving is to break you from that loop. That's the first stage, to break you from that loop. Not so much about getting. It's more about breaking that belief. Because it's only when you break that belief that you can function at the next level of generosity.
And many people who are broken from the power of Canaanite, you actually give and you get nothing back. But in that lack, in that low financial status, you still give. You tell yourself, listen, I'm going to break the back of this thing. But many people, when they give, and they give in the name of I'm breaking Canaanite, but in the process you're still asking God, how will I know? How will Canaanite know I'm your son? Why can't you bring this money? So until you come to a place of saying, I am not looking at my pocket after I give. Canaanite is not broken by pampering it, like, okay, please go, so that me and God can agree on
And
this thing.
that's why it's such a stubborn demon.
It is
It is so stubborn because even when you now want to give, you still want to give so that.
Yeah.
So Canaanite is not just broken by the fact that you're now giving. Canaanite is broken when you come to the place. Let's look at, this is how I usually explain it. Think of the digits on your phone. They're only 10, really, 1 to 0. There are no other digits. So my phone number is one line of a sequence of those numbers. You won't input a new number to call me. You'll use those
The same,
same numbers. Now, Canaanite is a master of giving you all the other combinations. Except the most important one, which is simple and straightforward. And when it is given to you, it looks like it cannot be. Because you've done so many complicated ones, you believe the more complex it gets, the closer you are getting.
Yeah.
And it works. Listen, one of the only reason I watch many of those shows that win money is just to watch how the Canaanite works. I get amused.
Yeah.
I keep telling my wife, he should walk away now, but he won't.
He still goes to the next
Because you've received what you never had.
Yeah.
Then you're told, are you willing to go for? And all the Canaanites tell you, go for it. Because everybody wants to arrive there.
I think for me the fun part is when somebody loses and then they cry.
Over what?
You want it's not your money. What are you crying about? Guys, let's talk about
Yes.
Perizzites.
Yes.
Now we talked about Canaanite. The land is the land of Canaan. But in this same land, there's another giant called Perizzite.
Wow.
Now this one has worked on the body of Christ. This one has worked on the church. I mean, the church can explain part as a Perizzite without notes. Their lives is just
Listen,
Perizzite.
the Perizzites is so powerful in the church. You know, when you want to know it's powerful, is when one rises, the other Perizzites attack you. Instead of being excited and saying, how do we all do this?
How do we get there? And that's why we say that if you look at the 7 giants, each of them, you have to do something.
Yes.
You have to break it by doing, not by just talking.
Let me explain why is this important for such things to be broken. Because while you think you're being frugal, you're actually positioning yourself to have no impact in the kingdom. In other words, when you're able to break those things, then you don't struggle either with giving at that level.
Yeah.
Those things so transformed our lives
Yeah.
that we've reached places where giving away a car was nothing. But a day would have been a car. First the wheels, leave the car.
Richard, tell us your war with Perizzites.
I think I'll tell you a story, and this is a very interesting one because we were with Pauline. There was somewhere we were supposed to go, and in this place we were going, there was a certain I don't care what event it was that needed me to be in jeans of a certain color, and I didn't have it. So we decided before we get there, let's go into a shop. Then we just buy the jeans and then we go. So what happened is that we entered into one of the malls. When we entered into the malls, of course you find there are many shops, and we just went straight in. We didn't even bother to check what it is. So we just went inside.
Why are you so happy?
I know why she's laughing. Because when we went there and we looked at the prices, I don't know, one jeans that was my size was 9,000 shillings. Now, 9,000 shillings
It's $900.
is $900.
No, it's not $900.
$90.
$90.
$90.
You know, it was difficult for us to even think that I can buy a trouser of that amount.
Not a suit.
Yeah, just one. And it was $9,090. And so I told Pauline, you know now you are with this attendant here. So again, you don't want to be embarrassed. Because this attendant is here, he's waiting for you to choose so that he can, yeah.
True stories.
So, so when I looked at it, I realized there's no way I'm going to buy a jeans that is 9,000 shillings. So I told her, I'm looking, I knew the kind of thing I'm going to ask is not here. It is not on this, it's not displayed here. So I asked her for it, and then she said, okay, fine, for that one, maybe you can come on this particular date. There is a consignment that is coming in, and it's yeah, that's the one that I want. I told Pauline, let's get
I'm just confused.
yeah.
What's your story?
Perizzites is real.
What's your
So
story?
for me, Perizzites came in at the place where I used to stay. There were so many fleets of stairs, but I just never wanted to move to a house with a lift, because house with a lift equals more money. So you're taking those stairs with when you're trying to get your gas cylinder up to 6th floor. And at the end of the day, you're like, why can't I move? It's not like you're not in a position to move, but Perizzites has held you so tightly that when you think about moving into another house, you're like, what? And now the fare, and now there's so many reasons that come at that time that show you why you cannot move into that house. Yet you're like, you see, I'm saving cost. You never even look at the comfort. You don't even look at your quality of life at that time. So you're like, I'll break my back here, carrying a gas cylinder.
Yeah.
Because when you don't want to part with money to give the watchman at some point to even help you carry. So Perizzites is actually real, and sometimes it's just in the mundane things, until one day you sit down and you're like, my God, why do I have to put myself through all this? And you just decide, this is the day I'm moving, and you just move. You don't even give the landlord notice, because you don't want to stay 1 month that you could actually change your mind. So for me, actually, Perizzites was really in terms of moving into in changing houses, but it got to a point where
But did it change?
Yes, it did change.
So you hit Perizzites.
I hit
In
Perizzites.
fact, there's something I want to highlight that both of them are saying, and I'm also saying, I hope you've noted. This wasn't taking foolish risks. We could all afford. We
But
just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Actually,
of the
that's
Perizzites.
Perizzites. Perizzites is when you can afford, you can't do it. If you don't have the money to do something, that
That's
is now what
something
is
different.
foolishness. Perizzites is when you're small in your eyes, even though you have the ability to do something. That's what we're talking about. Perizzites?
I think our experience has been a very interesting journey of Perizzites. One of them, which I can highlight, is where you have a cooker that has an oven, but you never use the oven. Because the electricity bill will go high. So you can't explore because the bill will be too high. And we struggle with that. So we'd rather eat anything and everything, but never use that.
No, you're not using the oven.
We are not using the oven. And for us, that was a battle. Until the day we said, can we check even if it does it work? Since we bought it, we had never used it. And then this was almost 10 years later. Like, does this thing ever work?
So you used it.
But we used
You
it.
switched on.
We switched on.
And you realized
and
life
that
does not
journey,
stop.
No.
yes.
Yes.
Continue.
And that journey became very easy.
Yeah.
We can bake now.
I have to say this one. I think I remember when we moved the houses. In the houses, the house we were living in previously, it had this one bulb that is hanging on the ceiling, and that is what was used to light the room. We moved into another house, and one room alone, the sitting room, it had 15 bulbs. 15. And when I went there and I looked at all the
Perizzites kicked in. Bro.
Perizzites kicked in. And for me, it was like, who is going to pay the bill for all these bulbs? And it was, at the beginning, I was taken aback because I was used to one room, one bulb. Now I'm in a house where one room is only 15 bulbs. Now that means...
And you are praying for expansion.
Exactly.
Expansion comes with a cost.
Exactly. But the thing is, you know what? We put all the bulbs in and we switch them on. And
In
life
fact,
goes
to
on.
beat Perizzites in that case, you switch on everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to tell yourself, listen, life still goes on to beat Perizzites. Because now, on the other hand, we have people who will not switch on those bulbs.
Yeah.
They'll choose and say, we are using only this one. So these other ones can wait. You know? So to beat Perizzites, there are times you're told,
Use it.
instruction, you know, when you ask someone, what's your instruction? to switch on my bulbs. Does God talk about bulbs?
Yes, he does.
What's wrong with you?
Mine was go and buy clothes. You'd think prophet of God, man of God, God will give me something more profound than go buy clothes for your family.
Yeah,
That is a word of God.
that is God. Instruction.
Yes.
Always telling you
Yeah.
what to do. Yeah. Who has not told us their journey? Perizzites.
I think for myself, it started a couple of years back. Let me give context. So when we were in campus, we were getting a group of friends were getting mentored by somebody, and since he's our mentor, we decided he'd be the one we are treating for the meeting. And of course, we take him to some downtown restaurant, and he obliges us and comes, and we have the meeting very nicely. And at the end of the meeting, he tells us, this is the last time I am coming here. From the next time, we are going to a hotel uptown.
Yes.
And we all start panicking because none of us have ever been in there.
Yeah.
And we actually had to do a recce, you know, like the way you do a recce mission to find out how much is tea, how much is juice, how much is water. Because you don't want to embarrass yourselves when you finally go there. And he told us, the reason I'm doing this is very deliberate. There's a certain mentality that must start to break if we're going to journey this journey together.
Yeah.
All right? And you have to start seeing yourselves in a certain light. And within certain environments and contexts, then you get to interact as well with people of a different mindset as well. Not to think of yourself as higher than, but to start positioning yourself and seeing yourself as a son of the kingdom.
Yes.
And not blocking yourself from accessing and being accessible to certain things that God may want to actually bring to you. So that has been a very, it's been something I constantly ask myself, why not me? Why not me? Why can't I access this? Not to, of course, then go out of my way to make it happen by hook or crook, but ensuring that you're not also positioning yourself in a poor light.
But now you go to 5-star.
I do.
Comfortably. And you sleep there.
Yes, I do.
We are trying to tell you we hit it. This Perizzites has to be broken. You must tell yourself there is something I do that I know I can do now at ease without even thinking twice.
Yes,
It is
where
the
you
Perizzites.
are now, whoever you are, there's things you can do, but you're not doing. That's the first step.
Yeah.
Stop. Don't think extreme like some of the journeys we had to go, because the demand God placed on us was equal to the assignment within that window of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not about how much we had to
It's
go
not the
spend,
money.
or it is about breaking your own current barrier
Yes.
to be able to step into the next step. For them, it was just crossing a street. That was a barrier,
Yes.
a real one. And that's it. I mean, sitting with your own oven, yes, never switching it on, but it's yours. That's what we're talking about.
That is war.
Yes,
That
yes.
is war. Guys, let's talk about Hivites. Hivites, the limited lifeist. You know, you define something and you're like, okay, wait, this giant is crazy. It wants life, but behind the scene, while lying, you're so limited, but there's this image that everybody knows you by. But when you look at the image behind the scenes, you're like, okay, wait, I don't like this.
Yep.
You have a stage where you're performing this life, but behind the scene, when you get back into your normal self, you despise.
Yep.
But you know what? You must maintain character. Let's talk about Hivites, especially millennials.
I think Hivite is so pronounced in the social media age.
Yes.
You know, you don't want to be seen like you're being left behind. There's something we call FOMO.
Correct.
You don't want to be seen like you're missing out. Everything you want to be seen like you're on top of the game, which is not most of the time the correct picture. And I think because of this, we end up suffering a lot mentally, because you have to put up this image, so it forces you to maybe go get into debt because you're trying to portray a picture that you're not. It forces you to actually even suffer mental breakdown, because at some point you're really trying to keep up with the Joneses and the Kardashians. You see what you see on TV, you're trying to bring it here. And also now there's an era of influencers where you're trying to live what you see an influencer do, you also want to be part of it. So it's an agenda that is really a struggle with many young people. But apart from young people, I notice it's also a giant with our older generations, where our parents would want to say, you know, my child went to that school, you know, I live in a certain place. So I noticed that that this giant is a giant that attacks both the young and the old,
Oh, yes.
but it just depends on where you are at, and depending on your generation, it will come in different ways and forms.
It
Yeah.
can give you life, depending on your age. What is life to you? Let me exaggerate it. Tell us, you, Jenny.
Well, I think for me, it's the whole issue of, I think we are in the same generation. So FOMO, fear of missing out, is a real thing.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And you want to be able to identify with, growing up, is called them cool kids. So you want to either have the correct lunch packed or whatever it is to be able to fit in. But it also happens in the workplace. You want to be in the team that's outshining. You want to be in the team that's performing. You want to be in the team that's getting the accolades. And to an expense, at other people's expenses, whether it's your teammates, but provided you're the one who's shining and you're the one who's now the one who looks like you're the one who's doing a good job, you can't be where there's no applause and accolades. So I think it comes with multiple giants as well.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think for me it was an interesting moment as we were going through the Hivite, and I got an assignment to work on, and the assignment I had no clue. And I had to show
And you
up.
expected to
I have
perform.
to perform. And that message really dawned, I would call it again my bulb moment, when I realized it would be pride to actually go and show like I know. And I decided to carry someone along with me, who went and did the show, did the presentation, and we still were able to perform as we were expected to. And for me, that was something. Had I not had Hivite, I would have translated, gone and done a shoddy job, because I want to be seen I'm the one. And for me, I think that was a moment.
I think for Hivite, when you talk about Hivite also, that thing of wanting to be recognized, because this is me. Remember when you talk about your stage, and you said that everybody must ask themselves, where is your show? Which is the day?
What is your stage?
What's your stage, and who is your audience? Some people, the audience is just people in your office. When they see who you are outside, and let me tell you, when guys get shocked, I'll have to say this here, especially in the workplaces, it's when somebody dies and they must come to your village. And somebody's like, okay, wait. And you know, Kenyans, we have no problem whispering to each other. What happened here? People sometimes will even hide. I don't want you to come to my village. Why? Because I don't want you to see. Because the image I have here and the image I have in the village, the show is wrong. And there are many people who have gotten into debt, many people who have gotten into depression, many people who have no friends just because they must maintain the character. And we said that with the Hivite, you must separate yourself from what the Hivite has introduced you to you. So you have to tell the Hivite, my friend, this is not me. Question, how do you reverse? How do you now come and tell us this is the real me? You realize now Hivite will start whispering. Don't. You cannot expose yourself.
Actually, one of the most, you see, the Hivite is also the primary giant behind suicide. It's a primary giant. Because suicide is a result of two lives. That's why it surprises people. We can't tell who's going to commit suicide. Why? Because the picture they have painted versus who they are is a problem. And this begins, listen, unfortunately Hivite is one of the giants that we get coached in since childhood. It's one of those. Of course, many of them are like that, but this one is quite primary in the sense that you grow up in a family where you've always seen this double standard, where everybody at home is the way they want, wearing stockings, when guests show up. The house is reorganized, is ordered, a nice meal is made, and whatever, and you begin to learn, this is the model. We must have two faces.
Two worlds.
There's who we are and who we are not. You also told things like, don't talk about this family. People shouldn't know what you're going through. Even if you go to school and you have no lunch, don't tell anyone. So you're growing up with this thing that it is a problem for people to see who you really are. And the minute that becomes part of your DNA, before long it becomes your way of operation. So then we get excuses. I'm just a loner, I'm a private person. We have so many labels that we create. And the problem with that is that as the Hivite, while people like the Girgashites and the rest do not give any value to the word, the Hivite fakes the word. Always acts like it is working.
Yeah.
Because they can't accept it is not working. So the Hivite struggles with being helped.
Wow.
Because there's
Can't
nothing
ask
to
for
show.
help. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you're saying, the ability to say, this is beyond me. This I
Call
don't
somebody in.
do. This, call somebody in.
Wow.
Let somebody see who I am. Listen, sanity is having at least somebody, 2, 3 people who know who you really are.
Yeah.
And who don't just know, they are not party to keeping it hidden. They are party to you changing and improving. The reason you brought them in is because you know something is wrong. And we need to journey beyond here. And neither do they expose you, because Hivite can expose to look good.
Oh, yeah.
Hivite is also the spirit of gossip. That's what it
Bringing
operates.
others down. And we are
Bringing
going
others down.
to
Yeah.
Jebusites. Of
Yes.
course, Jebusite is so fresh in
Very
our minds.
connected.
We just had that last week, so I
Yes.
believe most of you have watched this even before we summarize on the Jebusite.
Yes.
The spirit that storms,
The stomper.
the stomper.
I'm telling you, it's interesting that the Jebusite is the smallest in number. Among all the giants, they are few. Yet they hold the most crucial position. They are kings.
Wow.
They are kings, they are rulers, they set the stage, they determine people's destinies. The Jebusite is the one with the arrogance that can query your prophetic destiny.
Yeah. And the Jebusite is the one that says, you're not coming here.
You will never become
You are
this.
not going to,
Not qualified.
you're not coming into your throne.
Yeah.
These guys, they try to withstand David.
Yes.
Then the Jebusite is the one that says, you,
Yes.
the lame
The blind and the lame.
and the blind
Will keep you.
will deal with you.
Yeah.
Now look at how arrogant this Jebusite is, how this giant is. Why? Because when you say that God has said, this is our season to experience his power, this Jebusite stands up and says, not here, not at my watch. It will stomp you, tread on you, and make sure you stay down. Now the question is, there's a question you said last in our last conversation. You could be the one who is stomping,
Yes.
but you could be also
The
the one who
stomped.
is
They're
stomped.
the same. And let me tell you how that works. First of all, remember what we said about this principality. It lives in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It lives in Jerusalem. And scripture says, no, listen, David, greatest king, did not kick them out. Jesus found them.
Those are many years. They survived.
And the thing about the Jebusite, it sits on your throne, meaning it's a major impersonator with intent to destroy you.
And not allow you to rule.
Yeah, because let's look at Jesus, guys. Jesus, you know, we like saying Jesus died. Okay. We say Jesus was crucified. Okay. We say Jesus died for us. Okay. We avoid who killed him.
You who kill those who are sent to you.
Who killed him?
The
The
Jebusite
Pharisees. Who are they? The Jebusites.
spirit. Yeah.
The Jebusite spirit speaks the language of God.
And you see, Jesus revealed to us and said, you who kill those who are sent to you.
Yes.
There's a word sent to you.
Yeah.
That you kill. The messenger you kill. That's a Jebusite spirit. And how do you kill? You don't stand up and say, by the way, today STCC. These conversations you're having today, we are going to kill them. This is not how the Jebusite speaks. You take the word and you start speaking words that kill the voice of God. When you kill the voice of God, you live by a voice.
Yes.
Which voice are you living by? So Jebusite does not announce itself, but it comes by a word, a voice.
Crash.
Which word are you living by? Have you killed the word sent to you? Have you killed those who are bringing the word to you by your words, the Jebusite?
Yeah, they hate the sound. It's natural to the Jebusite to, you know, it's funny, the Jebusite claims. Jesus says to the Pharisees, you sit in the seat of Moses. Interesting. Meaning, From outward appearance, if you were going to Jerusalem, who would you have found? So you came to Jerusalem to worship God.
But who is on the throne?
Who is
on the
sitting
seat?
there? Who is actually, listen, the Jebusite is so effective. Jesus dies, the curtain is torn from top to bottom, allowing everybody in. And the Jebusite sews the curtain back. And temple worship continues.
Yeah. And
But
that is where when you see
there
Jesus
you go.
walking out, when we say, and Jesus walked out, we have a message on our channel where we talk about Jesus walking out of the temple.
Yeah.
Where Jesus is telling you, listen, even me, I'm looking for me. I'm not in this temple. I don't appear anywhere.
Yeah.
The Jebusite.
So let me give an example
Yeah.
in our day. The power of God to create
Wealth.
wealth. Jebusite says to you, that is materialism.
You're after money.
And sounds like God. It says, the Bible says, there's no Pharisee who did not quote the scriptures to Jesus. Yet, they were quoting it in context to kill him. You're quoting the word to kill the word. Don't you joke with this.
This is the Jebusite. When you talk about the giants, guys, we are saying these giants are in us. They are around us. They are in the city. We have to kill the giants. So before we finish, I think we need to just have our closing remarks, because having gone through a journey of Hittite all the way to Jebusite, we've had our experiences, and like we've said, this is something that you have to continue in. You never reach a place and tell God, my friend, I have dealt with these giants. Right. Remember, we're in a place of restoration, a place of redemption, a place of coming back to who we are supposed to be. So in this journey, you will meet Hittite, not once, not twice. May you stay alert so that you know when you smell it, you know that's a Hittite. When you see it, you can tell this is Hittite. Let's hear our final thoughts as we close this series.
Exactly. And just like you have said, that you will meet a Hittite, you will meet a Jebusite. And therefore, as you continue climbing, as you continue getting to dimensions of life, the fact that you defeated a giant at this level, you go into another level, you will meet the same giant, but in another level.
Yeah.
And therefore, that means that you always have to be vigilant. You always have to be conscious of what is happening around you and inside of you, so that these giants do not defeat you when you're on this level, yet you have defeated the giant on another level. And therefore, don't allow yourself to slip back. Don't allow yourself to drop the proceeding one. Don't allow yourself to drop what God has, the journey that God has brought us up to here. Make sure that you're always there, you're always conscious that your life is not just on autopilot. Your life is being managed consciously and moving on, understanding what is happening inside of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think also for me, as we conclude on this conversation, one thing that has come out clearly is that there's a lot of dying to self as you look towards conquering the giants. There's a lot of setting your eyes on God. Let Him be the one to help you conquer these giants. Anytime we try to do it by our own might, it will get weary, and the giants may overwhelm us, and we may end up being swallowed. So let's keep our gaze on God, and let's trust God in the journey of entering the promised land.
Powerful. I think for me is when the word comes, I don't dilute it. I don't allow the spirit of the 7 giants to dilute that or divert it, or even bring their own version. I think that's what I'm going with. Like, I'll be conscious of whatever level of war I am at, there's always a proceeding word. Let that word, its power, its intent, not to be diluted. Yeah.
My takeaway from the conversation is that the word says that the land has been given to us first and foremost, right? And that must sink in our hearts, that the land has been given to us. The giants are present, they're not being removed, and we are the ones to conquer them.
Yes.
But even as we conquer them, we have been guaranteed of victory. Right? We have been guaranteed of victory, and ours is to stay vigilant. Like everyone is saying, we will meet them at different levels. So it's just constantly being alert and being aware and being able to detect them, because I think the more you get versed with them, you're able to pick it out faster. Right? So being vigilant and not feeling that you've done the battle and now that it's a settled thing. So we keep tracking.
Right.
I think the best model is to think of it in this way. You've now identified them. It's like when you have an ailment you've had before. You can tell the symptoms.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When a cold is coming up, you know. I know what this is, and this is what I need to do. That's the idea. The idea is to navigate, not looking for giants. Navigate looking for the promise. But if a giant shows up, you know exactly what to do. Have David's mindset. The question is not about who Goliath is. The question is, what is the value of killing him? What shall be given to the man who kills this giant? The debate was not if the giant can be killed. That should be our mentality.
It's a powerful way.
Yeah.
It's a powerful way.
Yeah.
The Bible says that when they entered the land, they ate of the harvest of the land. When they entered, not when they sat and planted. They ate when they entered. What does that mean to us? As we start this journey of entering the land, there's already harvest. Meaning, you'll start experiencing increase. Not because you planted, not because you watered, not because you cultivated, but because you've set your heart to enter the land. As you start increasing, may your heart never say, it is my power. May your heart never say, it is my might. Come to a place of saying that I embrace the scripture that reminds me that it is not my power, not my might, but it is God who is giving me power to create wealth. So the next test, we have said it before, it's the test of increase. Now that you're starting to increase, now that you're starting to touch money that you didn't touch before, now that you're able to afford things you couldn't afford before, and you can go where you didn't go before, you can live where you didn't live before. Are you going to say it's your power? Are you going to say it's your might? That's the big question. As we hit the giants, let's keep our eyes on Christ, the author and finisher of this that he has said to us. God bless you as we see you next year in our next conversations when we talk about the land. God bless you. And this is where we say,
Keep it kingdom, keep it pure.
God bless you.